Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I will give a couple more seconds for everyone to fill the room. Um, thank you for being here. Thank you for wanting to know more about immigrant rights as service providers. I'm here today to provide you with a presentation about Know Your Rights, so that you are able to share this information out in your community and to the community that you serve. So with that being said, my name is Catherine Ramirez Mejia. I'm the Access and Resource Specialist here at Mirror Coalition, and I'm happy to share this presentation with you today. So if you are new to the Mirror Coalition, we are a policy organization. We conduct both federal and state advocacy, and we are made up of over 150 member organizations across Massachusetts, many of which are grassroots organizations. We also have a citizenship application assistance program for those that are looking to become naturalized citizens. So some best practices for service providers. Here at Mirror Coalition, we've been receiving dozens of Know Your Rights presentation requests throughout the state, but we can't do it alone. We do need you. So what we can do is provide you with information and multilingual resources to share with immigrants, which will allow us all to reach a greater geographic region in Massachusetts. I want to take a moment to talk about the strength of you all as service providers. So whether you are a nonprofit worker, you work in a government agency, you're a social worker, whatever your profession is within the service provider field, you bring your own expertise. You all come from varying professions, and you may already know the immigrant families in your community and have strong connections with them. You may also understand the unique needs of immigrants in your community, and you may be a trusted individual that they look to for resources. You also may be able to hold regular meeting times in your community, and you may be able to communicate in various languages. And throughout this presentation, you're going to learn more about Know Your Rights, which some of the information may be complex, and you as a service provider can provide follow-up conversations and additional support to immigrants if they have questions. So you may be wondering, how can I support immigrants within my professional capacity? The first is to consider immigrant experiences. Consider the life of immigrants in your community that they had before arriving to the United States. Consider the reasons that they may have immigrated to the United States and their experiences since arriving. So that may require you to think about what is happening in other countries, conflicts and crises that are happening around the world, and what immigrants may be thinking about. Research shows that while immigrating, 75% of children experience separation from a caregiver, and exposure to traumatic events, discrimination, loss of social status, and changes in family rules and roles are common experiences of immigrant children. Immigrants may have transnational family dynamics and live across borders. So what might that look like if families are separated by borders and live in different countries? Immigrants may have complicated immigration statuses. We often receive the question, I work with this client, I work with this individual, what is their path to citizenship? Unfortunately, there may be no current path for citizenship for that individual. Immigrants are also expected to keep up to date about changing laws in immigration and policy. So just like you and me are continually keeping up to date with immigration and new policies and watching the news, so are immigrants. You can also take a moment to understand immigrant stressors. So they may be stressed by legal and immigration related stress. They may be concerned about family separation, or they already may be separated from their families. They may have financial stress and limited economic opportunities. They may have family responsibilities. This can include parenting or caregiving. And they may have stressors related to their identities. So possibly their faith background, their race, country of origin, gender, or sexuality. And they may have academic stress. What you can do is keep immigrants connected and involved, even if they're fearful of leaving their home. So you can meet immigrants where they are. You can check in virtually with them via phone, text, or WhatsApp and provide home visits if needed. It's important to help connect them to mental health resources. So if you're conducting a community meeting, you can start there. You can incorporate some grounding exercises, take additional breaks within your community meeting, and share some practices of self-care. You can also connect immigrants to mental health professionals and any mental health resources that you have in your community. As a reminder, the Massachusetts Behavioral Health Helpline is available to all in Massachusetts, regardless of immigration status or health insurance coverage. There's also a support group conducted by Immigrants Rising, an immigrant organization. And so they provide support groups for those that are undocumented and over the age of 18. You can find out more information on their website. During this time, you can also continue to share stories of strength and power. So whether you're sharing stories with immigrants in your community via a newsletter on social media, whatever it is, whatever method you have to share stories of strength and power, it's important to share stories of resilience. The Immigrant Learning Center has stories, immigrant stories. And also, there are a few recommendations provided here of some books for children, talks about family separation, and resources for youth and adults, stories of resilient immigrants through their journeys. One is a story of an individual that was able to finish their academic goal while undocumented, and the other are stories of immigrants living outside of the United States and what their journey was like living in the United States, and then after having to leave the United States, what their journey looks like now. So these are just some examples, some recommendations, and resources that you can share of stories of strength and power. Now, you may say, well, I've been receiving a lot of questions thus far. I have clients that have been asking me questions. And the first thing that we say is validate their experiences, acknowledge their stress and their worry and their fears, and understand that this is a time of uncertainty. Understand that things may be more difficult for them at this time. However, you can explain if you are asked a legal question, you can explain that you are unable to answer legal questions or provide any legal advice since you are not a lawyer. We do ask that you share resources, the resources that we have available on Know Your Rights and our multilingual recorded videos with immigrants in your community, and that you send a family preparedness packet home with any immigrant families in your community that you think would benefit from this packet. And I'm going to be talking more about Know Your Rights throughout this presentation. We're going to cover it in detail, and we're also going to talk about the family preparedness packet. But in short, it is a packet that allows families to prepare a plan for themselves in case the family were ever separated. Like I said, the Know Your Rights, which we'll cover in this presentation, talks about what to do if ICE comes to your home, what to do if you're at work or in a public space, and it talks about creating that emergency plan for your family. So we have materials available on our website in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole, and we encourage you to download and print those materials. As professionals, you can also take a moment to think about your workspace. Think about the spaces in your offices that are considered public or private. So before an ICE officer or law enforcement enters a private area of an organization, they must present a judicial warrant with the name of the person in question or a search warrant with the organization's address. And the warrant must be signed by a judge. So for instance, someone comes to your organization and says, I'm looking for John Smith. Well, is this individual, are they dressed in casual clothing? Have they identified themselves? Have they stated who they are? If the answer is no, and they are dressed in casual clothing, you do not have to answer them. You do not have to answer them when they say they're searching for John Smith. Now, if they have identified themselves as law enforcement or an ICE officer, and they say, I'm looking for John Smith, you can say, I would like to see, do you have a warrant signed by a judge? And if they have a warrant signed by a judge, you can look to see if John Smith's name is on the warrant or your organization's address. They will need that warrant signed by a judge to enter a private space in your organization. So to help you think more about public and private spaces, I think of a hospital, for instance. A lobby or any place that is open to the public would be considered a public space. However, there may be private spaces such as private offices or private areas that are restricted, and you may need something to enter, whether it be a key fob or something that would allow you to enter that private space. So consider within your office what is considered a public and a private space, and consider putting signs that say this is a private office, or identifying the areas of public and private. You can also conduct a deep dive of your internal organizational data and technology use policies. So we receive questions around, are students' information protected? Is my client's health information protected? The answer is yes, because even with the subpoena, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, often called FERPA, protects students' educational records. Meanwhile, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, protects individually identifiable health information, which can only be disclosed after notifying the patient or obtaining the patient's authorization. You can also speak to your organization's leadership and legal team to create a plan. So talk with your leadership and discuss the plan that your organization would like you to take. We also have guidance for employers on our website and linked in this slide, but this is for anyone that is an employer and is concerned about their employees. It's also important for organizations at this time to have discussions about addressing vicarious trauma and developing self-care for staff. With that being said, I'm going to now begin the Know Your Rights presentation, and I will start with a quick overview of the content of the Know Your Rights presentation. So, Know Your Rights and Family Preparedness. I'm going to begin with an overview of immigration enforcement, how people come into contact with ICE, and reasons for deportation. I will then talk about basic rights when interacting with immigration enforcement at home, driving, and in public. And then we'll talk about family preparedness, which includes parental rights and how families can make a plan for emergency and reunification. Lastly, I'll talk about where to find resources and legal help. As I mentioned before, we have new materials available on our website. We have video recordings and materials in English, Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian, and Haitian Creole. So the three main agencies in the Department of Homeland Security are the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, also the Customs and Border Protection, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. USCIS reviews application and conducts interviews for those with asylum or green cards or special visas, or those renewing their work visas or applying for citizenship. So in this image here, this individual is receiving a letter from USCIS, possibly inviting them to an interview. CBP conducts border patrol within 100 miles of all borders. As you can see in this image, it is throughout the United States and it covers most of Massachusetts. Within 100 miles of all borders, you may see a sign like this sign here that says enforcement zone. So this may be an area of, if immigrants are driving, they may see this sign and be asked to be pulled over, and be asked questions by the Customs and Border Protection. And Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE. They are the ones that conduct immigration arrests, detention, and deportation removals. Here in this image, this individual is wearing a vest that says police and ICE. However, ICE agents are sometimes dressed in casual clothing and drive unmarked vehicles when attempting to make an immigration arrest. So how do people come in contact with immigration enforcement? They may come in contact within the criminal system when applying for a benefit at USCIS while having a removal order or criminal charge, and through raids and targeted enforcement. Who is at risk of deportation? Well, anyone who is not a US citizen can be vulnerable if they fall under a ground of deportation, such as criminal charges or a prior order of deportation. So this can include those that are unauthorized or undocumented immigrants, people with asylum or refugee status or some other form of protection, lawful permanent residents, also known as green card holders, and non-immigrants, so those here on a student visa, travel visa. Some reasons for deportation include a lack of lawful status. It can be due to criminal grounds, including nearly all drug convictions, some domestic violence or violations of a protective order, some theft or fraud, and sometimes minor and non-violent offenses can lead to mandatory deportation, even for green card holders. It can also be due to security-related grounds like gang involvement or terrorism. Now we're going to talk about knowing your rights when interacting with immigration enforcement. So when talking with immigrants during this time of uncertainty and during this time of high anxiety, we can remember that it's important to learn about immigrant rights. It's important to practice asserting our rights, and it's important to prepare with family. Also, it's important to keep documents safe and filed away in a place in your home or somewhere that is easy to access, and to know who you can trust for legal advice. So some of the information provided in this presentation can be difficult to understand, but we encourage everyone to come back to it and study it again and again. What should immigrants do if immigration comes to your home? Well, first, do not open the door unless the officer provides you with a warrant signed by a judge. Ask the officer to identify themselves with their name, their agency, and ID. Ask if they have a warrant signed by a judge. In addition, you can slide a Know Your Rights card under the door or put it up against the window. And in the next slide, I'll talk about what a Know Your Rights card is, but it is a wallet-sized card that can be printed and carried around in a wallet or placed by your door, or you can bring with you in your car to have available for you to show your rights. you have the right to remain silent and to an attorney. So you do not have to answer any questions about immigration status or when you entered the country. You can state to the officers, I request my right to silence and to an attorney. And you can call a U.S. citizen friend or family or an attorney. These are the Know Your Rights cards. So they are, again, about wallet size, and they can be printed from our website. So you can either print them at your organization or at your local library or at uh, your school, but they serve as a helpful reminder to not open the door, to not answer questions, and to not sign anything. As I mentioned, you can show the card to the officer through the window or under the door, but do not open the door. These cards are available in multiple languages. They're available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Arabic, Chinese, Farsi, French, Korean, and many more. So please refer to our website to print these cards and have available for yourself and others. So this is what the card looks like. The card, again, reminds you not to open the door, not answer any questions, not sign anything, and to give the card to the agent, either through the window or slide it under the door. On the other side of the card, this is what you would show against the window, pressed up against the window. You would show this to law enforcement. And the card says the following: I do not wish to speak with you, answer your questions, or sign or hand you any documents based on my Fifth Amendment rights under the United States Constitution. I do not give you permission to enter my home based on my Fourth Amendment rights under the United States Constitution, unless you have a warrant to enter signed by a judge or magistrate with my name on it that you slide under the door. I do not give you permission to search any of my belongings based on my Fourth Amendment rights. I choose to exercise my constitutional rights. This is something that immigrants can show to law enforcement on the window or slide under the door. They do not need to know how to say any of the words on this card. They just need to be able to remind themselves to use it, to have it available, and again, to not open the door, show it on the window, show the card on the window to the officer, or slide under the door. So when asking to see a warrant signed by a judge, you can look for two things. Look for your name and a signature by a judge. If you do not see your name or a signature signed by a judge, do not open the door if you are at home. I want to take a moment to talk about driver's license. So we are still celebrating in Massachusetts the fact that immigrants, regardless of their immigration status, may be eligible to get a driver's license. However, if you yourself are an immigrant or you know immigrants, please encourage them to only drive on a full driver's license. Because to drive with a permit, they must have someone else in the car. They should not be driving alone if they only have a permit. So to drive with a permit, you must have someone in the car who has been driving for a year, is over the age of 21, and is sitting next to the driver. We wouldn't want anyone to be pulled over for driving without a full driver's license. And there's more information in QR code here to our website with more information around driver's license. So what to do if you are stopped when driving? The first thing we say is stay in the car and place your hands on the steering wheel. The driver must provide their own name and address, but the passengers do not need to answer any questions. If you can, show your Know Your Rights card against the window. Police can search your vehicle if they believe you have been involved in a crime, but you can say, I do not consent to the search. And never provide false documents. What to do if immigration or police stops you in public? The first is stay calm. Do not run or resist arrest. You can say, am I under arrest or am I free to leave? You can remain silent. You can say, I want to speak to a lawyer. Can I call a lawyer? So ways that you can prepare is practice asserting your rights, memorize phone numbers of family, friends, or lawyer, and think of a U.S. citizen or someone with immigration status that you trust who can pay bond if you are granted one by an immigration judge. If immigration or police stops you in public, police can search you if they have reasonable suspicion that you are armed and dangerous. But if you are over the age of 18, the law requires you to carry any valid immigration documents you may have on you. So the law requires you to carry a form of identification on you if you have valid immigration documents and are over the age of 18. Again, never provide false documents. And I'd like to take a moment to talk about your safety. So think about your safety in that moment. Within these Know Your Rights presentations, we share with you your rights. However, it's your decision if you feel safe to assert your rights. So consider, are you alone? Is there anyone around? Is this a safe time for me to assert my rights? At the end of the day, it is your decision if you feel comfortable to assert your rights. If you are arrested or detained, you have a right to remain silent. You have the right to call a lawyer or family member and to be visited in detention by a lawyer. You can also contact your consulate. You do not need to sign anything. You should not sign anything or take voluntary departure of the United States. First, speak with a lawyer. Also, do not listen to immigration agents about your rights. Instead, ask a lawyer for facts. Now, if you know someone that has been detained, there is a link on this slide that you can use to search the whereabouts of the individual that has been detained. So I'd like to take a moment to talk about bond. Immigration enforcement can choose to place individuals it is trying to deport in immigration detention. If detained, many individuals can request release on bond while their case is pending. And immigrants can request the immigration judge to review the bond decision. It is important that you show that you will attend future immigration court hearings and that you have strong family and community ties. A bond can be set as low as $1,500, but many times it will be for a higher amount. Remember that only someone who is a U.S. citizen or has lawful immigration status should go to immigration to pay the bond. I'm now going to be talking about family preparedness. So we have these family preparedness packets available on our website in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole. And essentially, they help families have difficult conversations about what would happen if they were separated. So, like I mentioned, it allows families to have conversations about who will take care of their children in their absence and create plans for their child's educational, medical, and emotional needs in their absence, and also plan for reunification. Part of the plan includes protecting the family's information. So if the family chooses, they can contact their school and ask that they are not, that their information is removed from the school directory or on school social media. Families can also update school contacts and provide the school with the contact information of a trusted adult to pick up their child from school in case they are unable to. They can also register their child's birth with the foreign consulate if they wish to reunite outside of the United States. They can also apply for passports for their child and write a travel letter that will allow their child and that a trusted adult to travel outside of the United States if the family plan is to reunify outside of the United States, to reunite outside of the United States. I would like to now talk about some parental rights. Parents have the right to make decisions about their children no matter their immigration status. They have the right to share information, to not share information about their children. But if they're the main caretaker, they may want to tell immigration. They have the right to arrange who will take care of their children. And if detained, they can ask for a phone call and ask how to contact their children. If their children are in foster care, they can take part in the child welfare meetings while in detention and even after deportation, unless they have lost their parental rights. I would like to briefly talk about 4 options for identifying a caretaker for your children. So the first option for families is an informal option. They can talk to someone that they trust to take care of their child, and they can write it down on a piece of paper, their plan of emergency and what would happen with their children and that trusted adult. If they choose this option, it is an informal option and it can be done in your home, just talking to that trusted individual and possibly writing it down on a piece of paper. However, because it's an informal option, it does not give that caregiver legal rights to the child's school or doctor within that plan. The other option is a caregiver authorization affidavit. This form can be found in the family preparedness packet, but it gives the caregiver the right to make decisions about the child's healthcare and education for up to 2 years. The parents keep all the rights and can end it at any time. They can end this decision that they created and the situation that they have. They can end it at any time. However, it needs the signature of one parent and 2 witnesses, and it must be notarized. Another option is a temporary agent authorization. This form can also be found in the family preparedness packet. This allows the agent or person the family chooses to make any decisions that a parent can make, including about property and finances. This, however, is only valid for 60 days, but it can be renewed. For this, both parents must sign, if available, and it must be signed by the person that the family chooses and 2 witnesses. The other option is guardianship. So guardianship is a formal process that must be obtained through the courts. And a legal guardian has all the rights a parent has, but exercises these rights instead of the parent. So this legal guardian would make decisions and have rights about the children instead of the parent. Just a brief mention on important documents. This is a list of some examples of important documents that immigrants should have safe, filed in a safe place, a place that's easy to access for themselves if needed, and a place that possibly other family members know where the documents are if needed. So that includes passports, birth certificates, marriage license, insurance documents, any immigration documents. It's important that immigrants review their immigration documents routinely to make sure that they are up to date on hearings or any other immigration appointments. I now will talk about access to benefits and public charge. So some of you may have heard the term public charge before, and if you haven't, we're going to take a moment to learn about it. So a common question we receive about public charge, and you may have heard about it in your community or with clients that you work with or individuals that you know, or you may be considering this for yourself. But the question is can my family continue or start to use benefits such as food stamps and healthcare? The answer is yes. If your family is eligible for benefits, then you can continue to use those benefits or start to use those benefits. So, what is a public charge test? The public charge test is part of the application review by government officials to see if an immigrant applying for a green card or a visa to enter the United States will likely to primarily depend on the government for support in the future. Who does public charge apply to? So, this is where there's a little bit of misinformation. Some immigrants are concerned that public charge applies to them. However, for a majority of immigrants, public charge does not apply to them. It only applies to immigrants applying for a green card or applying for a visa to enter the United States. It does not apply to immigrants that are US citizens, that are renewing their green card, that are refugees or asylees, have a T or U visa, or have DACA, among others. And what benefits are considered? So there's only two types of benefits that are considered. The first is cash assistance for income maintenance. So that includes temporary assistance for needy families, supplemental security income, and state programs like emergency aid to the elderly, disabled, and children. It also includes long-term care, institutionalized care at government expense, like nursing homes or at a psychiatric hospital. But remember that benefits used by family members will not count in your public charge determination. So most benefits are not considered under the public charge rule. And here on this slide are some benefits that are safe to use. And we also have a list of safe benefits in Massachusetts. There's a QR code here and a link on this slide. But that includes healthcare programs like Mass Health and community clinics. That includes food programs like SNAP, WIC, and school lunches. And cash benefits from work like unemployment and Social Security. Also, rental assistance, such as public housing and emergency shelter. We are asked, could the rule change? Well, the current rule was put into our federal regulations and has survived court challenges. The Trump administration could try to reinstate the old rule, but even the old rule applied to a small number of people, and no changes would take effect immediately. And any changes would be challenged by immigrant rights advocates. Lastly, I want to talk about where to get legal help. So there are two main places where immigrants can receive advice and be represented with their immigration application or case. So the first is an attorney or a lawyer with a valid license to practice law in the United States. So the second one is an accredited representative who works for a nonprofit organization and has received training and special authorization from the United States government to help people with immigration cases. There is a list of accredited representatives found online and linked here. We have accredited representatives at Mirror Coalition. However, these are the two individuals that immigrants can seek immigration legal advice from or be represented in their case from. Now, the other group are called, some include notary publics or notarios. and they are not lawyers in the United States, and they cannot provide legal advice. So there are individuals within the immigrant community that may state that they can help provide legal advice. However, they are not a lawyer or an accredited representative. Think about who this individual is and if they are licensed to practice here in the United States before providing them with your money or your time. Another group of people includes interpreters and tax preparers. So interpreters can help translate important documents that you may have regarding your immigration cases. But however, they cannot provide immigration legal advice. If you yourself or anyone you know has been a victim to fraud based on providing money and your time to individuals that said they could help provide legal advice, however, they are not qualified to provide legal advice, then we do ask that you file a complaint. And below are some resources on where to file a complaint. And if you're looking for legal resources, our recommendation is to use the Massachusetts Legal Resource Finder as a legal service directory in Massachusetts. There are also free consultations at the City of Boston. And if you're looking outside of Massachusetts, use the Immigration Advocates Network legal directory. So this concludes the presentation. However, I ask that in your next steps, you think about printing and sharing the Know Your Rights wallet-sized cards. You print and share the Know Your Rights handouts and consider hanging up a Know Your Rights poster. You talk to families about family preparedness packets, which are available in multiple languages. And you use this training as a resource to refer back to and answer any questions. Again, here's a QR code to our Know Your Rights website. And I thank you for participating in this training, to wanting to learn more about how you can support immigrants in your community. With that, again, my name is Catherine Ramirez Mejia, the Mayor Coalition, and it was a pleasure speaking with you all.